everybody, and welcome to the Tablelands Regional Council Ordinary January meeting. I just want to acknowledge the members in attendance, council and also council officers in attendance. We have one apology, and that's from our Mayor Rod Marty, and he also has a request in for extending his leave up until the 8th of February 2021. So if I can have someone to move to grant the leave of absence for the Mayor up until the 8th of February 2021, please. Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor Wilkes. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we'll just ask everyone to be upstanding for acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. While we're standing, we go into bereavements and condolences. Please observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the community, for the members of our community who have recently passed. We wish their family and friends peace and comfort during this challenging time. Thank you. If I can just ask everyone to ensure that their mobile phones are on silent, and for anyone who hasn't signed in on the register, if they could please do so before they leave. Okay, item 6, declaration of any material personal interest, conflicts of interest by councillors and senior officers. And I will start with myself. I wish to declare a declarable conflict of interest under the Local Government Act 2009 as per section 150 EQ 4A and B with regards to item 12.1 in the agenda. This declarable conflict of interest arises because a person who is a related party of mine has an interest in this matter. The particulars: the name of the related party, Stephen and Vicky Milne. The nature of my relationship with the related parties is they are friends of mine. The nature of the related parties' interest in this matter is they are the owners of the land for the proposed development. However, they lease the land to the developer and have no involvement with the proposed development. A contract for sale of the land to the developer is also in place. I propose to leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while this matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you. Councillor Bilney.
Through the Chair, I have 3 declarable conflicts of interest. The first one being item 12.1 relating to Zuzu Yuzu Proprietary Limited. It's a declarable conflict of interest in that Stephen Till, who is the farm manager and holds a 10% interest in the company, is the father of my stepson, Houston Yusu's wife. I intend to leave the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted upon. The second item is 13.6, relating to the Economic Development Fund. I do have a declarable conflict of interest in that applicant number 4, namely the Malanda Chamber of Commerce, and I have a close working relationship with regards to the Jack May Park future upgrade works. I do actively attend meetings as an observer and do not hold any executive position within this organisation. I have also assisted with community events in my capacity as the local councillor. Given this decision is for grant funding, I will leave the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted upon. And this also comes about in relation to the Cloncurry Shire Council decision. This next one is about the Cloncurry Shire Council decision, about item 13.2, Procurement Policy for 2021. I have declarable conflict of interest as my stepson Bronson Juicy, who operates BGS Civil Contracting, is a local supplier and may be affected to any changes made to the procurement policy. I intend to leave the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted upon.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Councillor Hayden.
So I have a prescribed conflict of interest in item 13.2, Procurement Policy. My husband George Fitzgerald and son Errol Fitzgerald tender to the council. They may gain or suffer a loss depending on the outcome of the decision. I intend to leave the meeting while this matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Is there any further conflict of interest? No?
From me, Kev?
CEO?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr Acting Mayor, I'm declaring a conflict of interest under the Employee Code of Conduct and the Public Sector Ethics Act in relation to the notice of motion dealing with the Land Restoration Fund. I'm currently seeking personal legal advice and some statements that have been made about that fund and my involvement in approving the grant. So I propose to leave the meeting while that's being discussed.
Thanks, Bob. No other further conflicts? Okay. Item 7, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting in December. Can I have a mover? Councillor Welch, seconded. Councillor Bellamy. Anybody? Someone want to move that those minutes are okay? Yeah. All in favour? Item 8, any business arising out of the minutes of the previous meeting? No? All happy? Thank you. Item 9, deputations and delegations. We have 2 deputations today. Firstly, the first deputation is from members of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the Tablelands, and the second delegation is from members from the Malanda community in relation to the Malanda Falls Caravan Park. So firstly, I'll ask Ivy if she would like to present her deputation.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Cardew and councillors. I have with me today Owen Allen, Barry Ramishwa, and Ian Chair. On behalf of the Tablelands Baha'i community, I thank you for this opportunity to meet with you. Worldwide, the COVID-19 pandemic, together with volatile political situations, have added layers of complexities in our lives. There's much unrest in the world, and everywhere people are crying out for solutions, for justice and social change. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, says, "What greater oppression is there, and people are seeking answers, and they don't know where to look." In light of the challenges facing us, we feel that it's our moral and spiritual obligation to share with you the invaluable principles enunciated by Baha'u'llah, prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. Who is Baha'u'llah, and what gifts of counsels did he bring for humanity? In 1863, Baha'u'llah proclaimed he was the new messenger of God for this age. His mission was to bring about the unity of humanity and universal peace. Accounts of his sufferings make one wonder, how could he, a man of noble lineage, wealth and influence, succumb himself to persecution, exile, and 40 years of imprisonment, other than he had a divine mission? Baha'u'llah thought that God is one, religion is one, and that humanity is one. As ages go by, the true essence of every religion is lost. Good morals degenerate, and the social teachings become obsolete. Therefore, the spiritual teachings of religion need to be renewed from time to time, and new social laws implemented. Beginning in 1867 in Adrianople and continuing later in Akka, Baha'u'llah wrote to kings, rulers, and religious leaders like Emperor Francis Joseph, Napoleon III, and Pope Pius IX. He urged the leaders to pursue justice and disarmament. He warned them of the dire consequences should they fail to achieve peace. Baha'u'llah was gone and his message was dismissed. Now, 154 years later, we can see that the ordeals facing humanity today are very much about the consequences that Baha'u'llah had warned the kings, rulers, and leaders of his time. In his teachings, Baha'u'llah has provided a blueprint for human society, a world civilization where there will be enduring peace and well-being for all. Baha'u'llah's teachings are about the transformation of the individual and society through service and contributing to the betterment of the world. Sadly, his counsels were ignored, and the suffering of humanity is perpetuated because of fear, prejudice, arrogance, greed, the desire for personal gain and dominance. As we navigate our affairs in this time of uncertainties, we present you some literature with the hope that it will give you some inspiration in your work as civic leaders of our community. It's I believe that as we reflect on the Baha'i teachings, you'll find gems of wisdom and inspiration. In this book, Peace More Than an End to War, you'll find topics like understanding the conditions of the world we live in, governing the affairs of humanity, the process of consultation, and the quality of statesmanship will no doubt provide food for thought. We have included in this magazine, the Baha'is, a magazine giving general information about the Baha'i faith, our centenary booklet in honor of Clara and Henry Dunn, who brought the faith to Australia in 1820, and a copy of our World Religion Day booklet of this year. So to finish off, we will share a prayer which Owen will give.
Prayer of Unity. O God, O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavour, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank you
members.
again for the courtesy you've extended us today, and all the very best with your work.
Thank you very much.
We've got a copy for everybody, so perhaps, yeah. Just
Thank you. Okay, the next presentation from the members of the Malanda community. Do we have a spokesperson want to come forward, please? Jeanette Suffield. Morning, Jeanette.
Getting better at this. I don't know.
And morning to the Malanda community members.
Okay, on behalf of the Malanda Chamber of Commerce and the Malanda community, we would like to thank the officers and the councillors working on the Malanda Falls Caravan Park project for their willingness to consult and listen to our feedback on this matter. I do believe that they now understand the community's strong passion for this park and know what the community desired outcome would be. We understand there is a need to put out an expressions of interest to go to the next step. We strongly hope that when we add up this next step, that the community consultation continues and our views are considered. Our preferred option is not to look at the Malanda Falls Caravan Park and the Lakeside Caravan Park through the same lens, as they are very different and may at the time require different outcomes. Know that we as a chamber and of the Malanda Chamber and the Malanda community are always willing to be available for this very important project and the impact it has on the community from the Malanda Township's perspective should not be underestimated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, we have no more deputations, so we'll move on to item 10, and we don't have a Merrill minute. And item 11, Chief Executive Officer's reports, we don't have any of those. So we'll move straight into item 12.1, which I will now pass over the chair to Councillor Wilkes.
Thank you. As previously indicated by both councillors, they have declarable interests in this item, so they can't participate in any discussion or in particular any voting in relation to this matter. Have we got any comments around the table about this item? Yeah.
Do we need a motion?
Oh yeah, we'll have to, I suppose, won't we? Yeah, well, can somebody move that we open it up for discussion, please? Moved by Councillor Hodge, a seconder. Councillor Hayden. All in favour? Passed. Okay, open for discussion.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'd just like to go to, I'm pretty happy with this. I'd just like to go to page 104, just the one submission that come in from David and Sally Wilburn. I'd just like to read it, just take the time to read it, and then we'll ask the questions again. It says, being adjoining landowners to this, for this permit for a material change use on 157 Chester Road on Lot 83, we've come to the conclusion that we are not opposed to an agricultural farming principle. Our main concern is the daily consumption of water needed for this venture. If this water as needs comes from the bores, it will affect the groundwater, which is great concern to all of us. We feel the groundwater is slowly depleting, thus the solution being that they use collected rainwater and runoff water in some collection dams, as this water is wasted or unused. As this is upstream from our property, this will affect the water table and not to mention all property owners downstream. We are fully aware of the neighbouring properties that bores have run dry and not been able to sustain water for the full year. As we're all too aware that water is becoming increasingly scarcer. Having resided on our property for around 5 years, we now become aware that the flow of water is decreasing year on year. So I won't read down further, I'll just come down. We would need to be sure in writing to the council and by ourselves that the amount of daily water that we tend to use in this project will be monitored by the appropriate authorities weekly or monthly and have no effect on the water tables. Our other concern is that there would be an impact if the proposed use of poisons or weed control, chemicals and sprays for the fruit, antibiotics, etc. for red claws, etc. Would this be totally 100% organic and monitored? So I just want to go to our officers and say, how are we monitoring the use of water?
Through the chair, I don't think council officers will be monitoring their use of water. So they've got clear water allocations from the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy for the use of their ponds. We've also conditioned through the application and through this proposed the conditions proposed in this in the proposed approval as to how they operate their facility, how they first initially fill their ponds by collecting the rainwater and then cycling that through to the bottom of their pond system and then recycling that back up again. So it's my view as an officer that the conditions set and the method of operation proposed by the proponent will sufficiently address the concerns of the supplier.
Thank you. Comments about that issue raised by Councillor Hodge? Any other comments from councillors? Okay. Those in favour of the development being approved? Have a mover. Councillor Hodge? Councillor Clifton, all in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Bring them back in, please.
Well done,
Thank you,
Mr. Acting Mayor.
Acting. What page was that letter on, Pet? Oh, mine must be different.
Yeah, it's just about third last foot, third last page.
Yeah. I was on the floor of the
Okay, we'll move on to item 12.2, Sustainable Queensland Climate Resilient Council's grant application. Can I have a mover and a second to open it up for discussion of Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Bilney. Does you want to open it, ask an officer to speak to the report, or yeah? Can we have someone speak to the report, Bill?
Through the chair, I can give my best try. Obviously the information is in the report. In August, Council endorsed participation in the Queensland Climate Resilient Council's program, specifically the face-to-face briefings and the governance assessment. The face-to-face briefings have taken place some time ago, and the governance assessment is scheduled to commence in February. This funding opportunity opens up a third process as part of the program, which is basically a risk assessment, so a climate risk on the tablelands, and then the development of a strategy to address those risks across the Shire. There's two options. It's, council can either apply individually, or they can apply through a group of councils, which would in most cases be done through the Far North Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils. We are of the understanding that that's currently being considered by Avicuroc. So we're basically proposing to either apply both individually and through the Avicuroc, or one way or the other, depending on how Avicuroc is going to go with that. The single council maximum funding is $120,000, or for the group is $210,000. There would be, it's full funding. There would be no requirement for council co-investment in this, as I understand it. Any questions?
Questions? Councillor Clifton?
Just one question through the chair. Let's say we lodged and we're successful in receiving $120,000. Do you envisage any draw upon other council finances to support the project?
My understanding is that there won't be any draw on other council finances. We might use some of our council staff, or we might have to hire in an additional staff member or a consultant to help us. The fund itself should not come at additional cost.
Thank you.
Other further questions? Can I move and a second to the officer's recommendation?
I'll move.
Councillor Hodge, Councillor Wilkes, all in favour? Carried. We'll move on to item 12.3, options for proposed renewal of English Street, Malanda. Move and a second to open up for discussion. Councillor Bilney and Councillor Hayden. talk to it, please?
Yeah, I would, through the chair. As mentioned in this report, I've been fairly heavily involved in the community consultation process. What can be seen is that community are keen for change, as identified in the master plan. However, from the small sample that we've taken, it's not a clear representation of a majority appetite for either option as presented. I believe that the officer's recommendation makes sense in that this project should commence and finish in line with a projected scope of works so as to limit the interruption to local business and the community. I also consider that furthering of the design process and community engagement for the total upgraded project will also encourage community buy-in and support.
Thank you, Dave. Any further comment? Okay, put to the vote. So can I have a mover and a seconder to accept the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bellamy, seconded by Councillor Hayden. All in favour? Carried. Item 12.4, supply and delivery of various commercial vehicles. Got a mover and a seconder to open it up. Councillor Hodge.
No, 12.4.
Sorry?
12.4.
Okay, sorry, my run sheet is incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, item 12.4, caravan park, expression of interest. The mover and a seconder, please, to open it up for discussion. Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Clifton. Councillor Wilkes, or anybody want to have a discussion on it? Councillor Hodge?
Okay, I'd just like to start by the officer's recommendation is based on both caravan parks. So I just want to make that point because from the Land Chamber of Commerce they spoke about having them separate, but I don't think it's necessary at the moment because this is about an expression of interest. So I'd just like to make it fully aware that the officer's recommendation is to do with both caravan parks. I have some problems with the salient conditions now. I assume salient means the most important conditions. And two parts that I'm very struggling with is rental amount of $1 and the subsidy. Now, I just got to put this question is, I'm going to the Lakeside Caravan Park. The way this seems to be set up is in 2019-20, the revenue from the Lakeside Caravan Park was probably around $400,000. So the way this seems to be written is that whoever took the lease up on the Lakeside Caravan Park, if that was the same revenue, they would take all the revenue, $400,000, that he says. The rental would be $1, and we'd be giving him extra subsidy the first year to the 5th year. So they'd get all the income, don't pay any rent, and we still give them more money. I'm failing to see this, how this works.
Thanks, Councillor. If I can address some of those issues, Mr Acting Mayor. Good questions, Councillor. Certainly with Lakeside, and I'll take your figures at face value, let's say there is a revenue of 400,000, I can't confirm that because I haven't looked at that myself at this stage. But an operator, a person who puts in an expression of interest might say, well, with that $400,000, let's assume that that's an ongoing revenue stream. We don't want any subsidy from council. we'll just take that revenue and we'll do all the work ourselves. And there's a lot of unknowns in this, and that's why we've gone to the recommended an expression of interest process to see what the market tells us. The same with Malanda, a person might say, well, we're happy to take on all the capital works and the operational expenses at Malanda, and we don't want a subsidy. And commercially, that might put that personal business in a more favourable light when it comes to assessment. I'd be surprised if that was the case, because I know what capital works need doing there and what expenses are incurred there. But it's been set up based on discussions at the public meeting at Malanda in December, where there was some sentiment expressed amongst councillors and the members of the public that council didn't want to set up any potential lessee for failure. Now, we don't know what those terms will look like. We could have drafted a lease and gone out to tender with those lease terms set in concrete, but we haven't done that. We said, let's test the market, see what comes back, and based on those expressions of interest, council may or may not invite tenders for the operation. So it's very much in the early stages of seeing what responses are received.
Thank you, Bob. Any further comment? Councillor?
I'd say a question through the chair. If we do an expression of interest and we have an array of applications, and we decide that to choose one, at that stage can we choose one, or do we have to go to a tender process?
No, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, the Act allows us to call for expressions of interest, and then once we've done that, we can shortlist submitters to that expression and ask them to put in a formal tender. So we don't need to go out to the wider public again.
Okay. Thank you.
But we do have that ability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair, just for clarity, salient means key points in a proposal. So, and I also wanted to just get my own view of what an expression of interest is, and that is an initial transactional document, and it indicates a serious intent from a party that they would be interested to pay a certain valuation and acquire through a formal offer. It is an opportunity to provide information, important information, demonstrate suitability, interest and ability, so as to confirm reasonable prospects of succeeding. Gone too quick, hang on, just bear with me. There we go. Sorry, I just lost my little spot here. Okay, I appreciate the officer's efforts in compiling this report. It has been informed by meetings with the key stakeholders of the community, and it's just reinforced the community's desire to retain the parks, and particularly Malanda Falls Caravan Park, as a unique boutique attraction that directly benefits the local community and indirectly the wider Tablelands district. Broad conditions of lease have been documented and generally are considered responsible and appropriate for the benefit of ratepayers. Commercially, the rental amount of $1 in my mind should be further examined, as realistically this figure does not assist in council's intent to have a cost-neutral arrangement. In saying this, we should not impose an amount that potentially sets up the lessee to fail. I do support the proposed subsidy arrangement, which includes a sliding scale subsidy year on year, resulting in a zero subsidy by year 5. This correlates with council's vision for a measured transition to cost neutrality and provides a certain level of comfort to the lessee. It will encourage investment into the park's sustainability and financial viability within an acceptable time frame. This will also achieve an immediate cost reduction to council which is the ultimate driver of Council's resolution from the November 2020 meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie. Any further comment? Councillor Clifton?
I support the document as it's been put forward, the recommendations as it's been put forward, as well as the broad salient conditions. Because I do see, whilst I don't really agree with the subsidy and the rental amount, I do see that this document, this approach, maximises the opportunity for people to put in a bid. It doesn't narrow or limit potential bids. It makes potential bids as wide as they can possibly be. And of course, then, based on officers' recommendations and our own analysis, we then choose. But we really want to get as many bids as we possibly can for both parks. That then gives us the maximum opportunity to do, as David said, Councillor Billy said, is to look at the best option from the ratepayer's perspective as well as the community perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. Any further comment?
Mr. Acting Mayor, I'd just like to reinforce some of the principles that this report was developed under, and that is that we would consult with the Chamber of Commerce, that we would undertake meaningful community engagement. As everyone's aware, that's one of the principles of the Local Government Act, and you as councillors have undertaken an oath to uphold those principles. So I think that meaningful community engagement, I can't stress the importance of that enough. And the other thing we've kept in mind in drafting this is to maximise the opportunities for locals under our procurement policy with the local preference. So that's the intent, that's the way this has been approached, and I hope that just provides a snapshot of the background and the thinking behind the report.
Can I just ask, thank you, Bob, can I just ask that, is there any merit in removing the rental amount from the document, and also the subsidy conditions?
In response to that, Mr. Acting Mayor, I would say at this stage, leave it in, because the market will dictate what it wants to do. You may have a person put in an expression of interest saying, well, okay, you're generally talking about $1. We want to make our bid more attractive. We will pay you rent of X amount per year. Or, as I said before, we don't want a subsidy. We'll just take the revenue and we'll do all the works and undertake all the financial obligations from that revenue. So in that circumstance, it would be cost neutral to council from day one, basically. So I think let's test the market, see what comes back in, and make some decisions then.
Councillor Clinton, taking on board what the CEO has said, I agree with him. And I do think you could take out, say, the dollar amount and put in a set of words with something like, to be determined by the expression of interest person. In other words, you could change it, but I do support the idea very much. Even though it talks in the document about this is a model that was used for the swimming pool, and the swimming pool is a genuine community service. This caravan park, if we take, for example, the lakeside one, it's not a community service, it's a genuine, potentially a genuine enterprise. Although they come from different bases, the idea of this process is that I can, once I analyse it and sit down, is to broaden the horizons for people to put in as much as possible so we get the best bids. And my only suggestion would be change the rental amount to be determined by the bidder. Something of that nature.
Everyone else in agreement with that?
I'll be happy with that.
Do we need to make that as part of the recommendation?
We'll take that on board and adjust that.
Everyone happy with that? Okay, any further comment? I can have a move in a second.
Before you just move and second, Mr. Acting Mayor, but I think it's a good point to make that, and it's been made around the table and it was made by Jeanette as well, that while the EOI is going out for the Malanda Park and the Lakeside Park, they are two different beasts. And I think we've seen that. Personally, I haven't heard one peep about Lakeside, and as you know, we've heard many comments about Belanda. So they are different animals.
I can add to that, if I may, Mr Mayor, that my contacts with the community at Youngaborough, no one's expressed any interest whatsoever in the lakeside caravan park. Maybe Councillor Wilson may have heard some commentary.
Thanks. Okay, we done? All right, we'll put it to the vote. Can we move in a second? Councillor Hodge, Councillor Wilkes, accept the officer's recommendation. All in favour? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll get to item 12.5, supply and delivery of various commercial vehicles. Can I have a move and a second to open up for comment? Councillor Wilkes, Councillor Hayden. Anybody have any comment? Councillor.
Through the chair, just can I confirm, just for my own mind, when we are changing these vehicles over and they are retrofitted, I think that's the right word, or refitted, with existing accessories like warning lights, CVs, bull bars, is that we try and maximise what's already there?
Yeah, thank you for that question through the chair. It depends on what the additional accessory is on the car. I don't think we're going to pull bull bars off and put them on different cars. But if there's things like toolboxes and other more specific items that we need for our work, they generally get taken off the vehicle before we dispose of it and put on the new vehicle that we purchased.
Thank you.
Any further comment? Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, probably one, it's to do with the delivery. I know, you know, as they award points, I think in this case, you would not be able to punish someone for not being able to deliver them within, 10 weeks, because I know at the time now it's like Newcastle was Henstead to get them. It's just taken months and months and months to get them. So I'd just like to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. Any further discussion? Can I have a mover and a second to put it to the vote? Councillor Clifton, Councillor Hayden, all in favour? Okay. Okay, we'll go on to corporate services. Item 13.1 is financial reports for December. I have a mover and a seconder to open it up for discussion. Councillor Hodge, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Hodge, would you like to comment?
Yes, the expenditure side is on track, which is good. Of course, the revenue is almost 1.3 million, 1.3 million in deficit at the moment. But as the report states, that over the next 6 months, that should come back to roughly the zero budget. So, which I'm happy with that, because this is very, very important, because really from today we start working on our budget for this year, for the next financial year, and I think this budget will be the most important budget that we frame in our term. So we really need to make sure that we're on track as we budget. There's probably one question that you can take on notice if you wish, but the contract that we have for the people supplying IT support, I think we awarded a contract some months ago for about $500,000 or something like that. I forget their name, and somewhere. I think they're based in Townsville or something like that. Is that for just 1 year? I just can't recall. Is that just for 1 year, or it's not $500,000 every year? That's you can take that on notice if you like, but it's just something that's in my back of my mind working on the budget. It's a very important issue.
Yeah, so if I can, through the chair, from the budget perspective, all the information about operational expenditure is provided to councillors as part of those budget conversations. So, so you don't need to, you know, try and remember specific things, because that's officers pull all that together and present that to you. With regards to R&T specifically, the agreement, there's a component which is about the support, and there's a component which is around work that they are currently doing, which is essentially project type work, looking at our servers and a whole lot of basic infrastructure challenges that we have. Neither of those things are commitments beyond 12 months though, so we reconsider what level of support and what our requirements are from them. We will do that each year, and we will put that recommendation as part of the budget to what we think that spend will be. So we're not committing, you know, for 5 years to spend X amount of dollars, or be unable to do something else if we so decided. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's a report coming to the February meeting on IT expenses and the like. That was come out of one of the previous meetings.
So the report that was requested, and I don't know that it's got a time frame on it, but I'll check on that. But that report is actually around Technology One, so that's not about IT. I know that might be an odd distinction, but so IT is the technology and typically refers to the hardware and the platforms that the hardware actually operate on. Technology One is the product that we purchase that helps manage the business of council. So that's like a specific software product, if you like. And the report that was requested was around the Technology One project, because that is a significant investment for council, already a significant time and money investment today, and has a significant investment still to come. So that's the report that's being pulled together.
I think that was the one where I suggested that a certain period down the track that you come back to council and show us the benefit.
That's right.
The benefit of Technology One and how it's performing.
Exactly, yeah. So through the chair, that's right. So what have we done so far? What's that giving us? What are we going to do? What will that give us? That's right. That's the big picture.
And what role it plays, and what R&I role plays.
So yeah, so R&T are not part of that report. R&T are a different, it's within the broader sense part of IT, but R&T provide the technology support.
I'll still be preferring the whole, to make sure that, you know, substantial costs that we're spending over the whole, you know, IT spectrum or framework, if you want to put it that way, is that we're getting value for money, and everything is, you know, everyone knows the roles and it's performing in that role.
So through the chair, I would suggest that a report does not make sure of anything. A report provides that information. Officers are every day responsible for and appropriately focused on making sure that we're getting value for money from the things that we're doing. So the report is about informing council about where we're at, but the responsibility for making sure that there's value for money in all of the things that we're doing resides with officers who are doing those things every single day, and that's a commitment that they don't take lightly.
Oh, for sure, I understand, and that's your role. Our role, of course, it's at the top, that we make sure that we're here to manage the business on behalf of the ratepayers, and that encompasses it all. So, yeah, it's all of us.
Just, I guess, through the Mayor also, what you're proposing, including RMT and all aspects of our information technology service, if you like, that's a much bigger scope for that report. So I'd just like to flag, we're actually talking about changing the scope of the original request, and which is perfectly fine, but I'll need to come back to you and let you know when we can have that.
That'd be fine, because I agree with Councillor Hodge. I think we need to have a look at the big picture as a whole, so we can get a good understanding as opposed to parts. You know.
And perhaps again through the chair, it might be worth having a conversation about whether there's value for council in actually having a workshop to really look in detail at some of those things, to then consider.
I think that through you, Mr. Acting, I think that would be a good idea, Hilary and Mark and I and many other staff had a presentation from Technology One last week, I think it was. Time flies. And it was really eye-opening in phase 2 of the Tech One upgrade. And you look at workflows and how work's assigned to the guys out in the field, how we can report on the asset, and you talk about efficiencies and a better way of doing business. It's 1,000% better. So what we're hoping to do, and we've only discussed this initially, is get that presentation done for your benefit as councillors, so you can see in a demonstration exactly how it works. You don't need to operationally, but I think if you want to have a more efficient organisation, this will actually demonstrate how we're getting there. So we'll just book that in.
I think that'd be really good, because basically it's not sort of finger-pointing or anything like that sort of stuff. What we're saying, you might come up and say, listen, we've spent a lot of money here, and it's really working well, you know. And you might, could be something. Look, yeah, we thought we'd get this out of that, but that's not working, and we need to change it. Whatever. Yeah, just to be an open, minded process. So.
Any further comments?
My usual, looking at page 146, the full-time equivalent staff and headcount. In the 22nd of November, we had 292 full-time equivalent staff. On the 20th of December, we had 302, so we'd gone up by 8.4 staff members, full-time staff members. And I note that our employee entitlement ratio to operating costs remains is currently about 56%, whilst there are many other councils who are much lower than that. So I look forward to the organisation review in the course of time.
Thank you. Councillor Clifton, any further comment? I'd just like to make one comment, if I can, with regards to local purchase tables. The percentage rate over the last 3 months is declining for our local purchase, and I'm a little concerned about that. And I'm suggesting that again, through a workshop process, that we look at our orders and things for purchases outside of the shire. So if we can organise a workshop for that, and maybe look outside the square a little bit to see how we can improve our local buy purchasing to bring these percentages back up again. I know in October it was 61%, and we're down to 41% in December. Christmas may have had a bearing on that, but November was 44% as well.
So if I could, through the chair, 2 things. I would just like to come back to Councillor Clifton's comment around the headcount. I just want to be clear that the number that has increased is the full-time equivalent hours, which is the actual hours that people work. But we do include the headcount numbers there, and you can see that for the December period, it's actually 5 actual human beings less on the books, as opposed to the full-time equivalent hours, which is the calculation based on the total number of hours that people have worked. So that's just an important distinction. With regards to local spend, absolutely we can have a look at that. I think that the important note there is that the graph that you're looking at is payments made. That's extracted from the payment system, as opposed to the information that you get about purchase orders in that detailed report. So the difference there is that we could have contracts that were let 6 months ago that we're making final payments on now, and so that will skew those numbers. That's why looking at the actual purchase orders each month gives you a better indication, and over time you'll see the impact of those purchase orders on that graph. But the graph reflects when we're actually making payments outside of the region.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, so can we have a mover and a seconder to adopt the financial report? Councillor Hodge, Councillor Clifton, all in favour? Okay. Okay, item 3.2, the procurement policy, and we'll just wait for the room to clear the Councillor Bellamy and Councillor Hayden. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to open this up for discussion? Councillor Clifton, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Clifton, would you like to comment?
No. No, good start.
Anybody want to comment?
Oh, just asked, I guess it's Hillary, it's the track changes that are being amended in this policy, so just like to go through the track changes, please.
So,
We start from 1.9, value for money, I think it is.
yep, so, through the chair, if you want me to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that in, under value for money, we have, removed the line that says, and community and environmental benefits achieved through providing a local business preference, and added in, the words, and any quantifiable. So it changes it broadens that statement to, focus on quantifiable, aspects of the evaluation, to focus the value for money on, where possible, the least cost outcome.
And the second inclusion, 5.5?
Well, I just have a question.
Oh, sorry.
May I ask through the chair, why we've taken out item B? Is it because it's become unnecessary by the concentration on the earlier area in part A?
B isn't removed, that's just the formatting as,
Oh,
so
okay.
it hasn't struck out the words, it's just the,
Okay, sorry, my misunderstanding. Yeah, thanks.
Is that?
That's good.
Yeah, if you could just give an explanation of 5.5, please.
so the addition of 5.5 is to provide some specific direction to officers around the actual evaluation of offers. So this is again to more clearly articulate councillors' intent to, wherever possible, deal with the cheapest local supplier. And so looking at the way that we evaluate offers to ensure that we will take a least cost approach for the small to medium value purchases, so that's those that don't require a tender, and that for those purchases that do go to tender or have a complex nature requiring a complex assessment, so there's a specific like a specification that we need to evaluate and those kinds of things, that we change the model for that evaluation to ensure that we're actually getting a value for money ratio score that councillors will start to see coming through in those tender reports.
Any further questions, comments? No?
See how it performs.
Can I have a movement?
Oh, sorry.
No, do you want to comment?
Through the chair, yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that the intent of these changes is to, as best as possible, excuse me, not COVID, ensure that tenders that come, recommendations from officers that come to council for consideration are aligned with your intent. So we're just trying to give better direction to officers around the tender evaluation process, so that when you see these things come to you, they are coming aligned with your intent.
Thank you, Hillary. Any further comments? Okay, so can I move in a second, please? Councillor Hodge, Councillor Wilkes, all in favour of the office recommendation? Carried.
I'll have to get
wait till the other councillors come back into the room.
Special delivery.
We had one tea.
Provisionals.
We ate it.
Okay, item 13.3, Millstream Rural Fire Brigade request for waiver. Can I have a move in a second, please? Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Hodge. We'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Wilkes, would you like to talk to this? Or?
Yeah, I actually agree with the officer's recommendation. It's my belief that rural fire totally subsidised by the state, and it's a cost that has to be borne. It's only a minimal cost to council, but it's still a cost that has to be borne by council.
Councillor Hayden.
So I actually think this could have been done 30 years ago, and I would have thought when they done the subdivision that rural numbers were actually allocated to all these blocks. And to me, I don't see it being different to other, allowing a $3,000 request months ago, much difference to this.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Any further comment?
Yeah, Rural Fire Brigade, they do a wonderful job. So, and I can understand Councillor Wilson's comments that, you know, they are funded by the state, but they do a lot of community work. And I'd be happy to move the motion that it be we waive the $208.
Further comment? So do you want to move a motion to, well, we vote on this one first, Bill?
We haven't got a move and a seconder for the one on the board at the moment, Mr Acting Mayor. We've only opened it for discussion.
So I'll move that the fee be waived.
Have a seconder? Councillor Clifton? All in favour? Motion lost. Have a move and a seconder for the motion as presented with officer's recommendation. I move in a second. Councillor Wilkes. The seconder. No seconder. Motion lost.
How do I bring my motion back then?
You can't, it's been defeated. Mr Mayor, just a word of advice is that we need a decision, because otherwise it leaves the North Millstream Rural Fire Brigade in limbo. We can't act on their request, so either it's going to be declined or it's going to be approved. I don't think we can sit there in no man's land and not deal with it.
Through the Mayor to the CEO, if a motion was passed delegating the decision to you, would that be appropriate?
I think it's before council. Thank you, councillor, through you, Mr Acting Mayor. I think it's before council and it's appropriate that council makes that decision.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, I moved the motion previously, which was defeated. So through you and to the CEO, if someone else moves a different motion, can that be accepted?
On the same, through you, Mr Acting Mayor, on the same terms, do you mean?
Yeah.
Because no council's dealt with that, that's been lost. That's my opinion.
Okay, so we could make a move that someone can make a motion that we change the fee to $40. You've got to make a decision here somehow. You just can't sit there.
Councillor Hayden?
So Through the chair, how did the first motion get up? Weren't we not supposed to do the first motion at the council officer's recommendation? Because I didn't see the first one come up. I thought we were voting on the officer's recommendation to decline.
Well, we
So
haven't,
how'd that get above it, the other one? Were we not supposed to deal with the first one first, the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, through you, Mr Acting Mayor, no one moved and seconded the officer's recommendation at that stage.
Well, because I would have went with the first one. So,
this is where I just asked for a mover and a seconder, we didn't get a seconder. Can we go back to that?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's actually been lost yet, because I assume we're just waiting for a seconder for that. That was my
Yeah,
reading of the proceeding, but I'm not sure.
I agree. Yeah, we'll go back to it. Can I have a
Which
mover?
motion are we going back to?
The officer's recommendation. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept the officer's recommendation?
We've got a mover, Councillor Wills.
Yep, to get it on the table.
Yeah, and you'll second it?
Yep.
So, all those in favour?
Oh, excuse me, can we make an amendment to that before we vote on it? A full shadow amendment?
Well, I think we should be voting on this, shouldn't we?
on this time.
That'd be my advice. If you want to, because as you're aware, Mr Acting Mayor and Councillors, our standing orders aren't the greatest piece of work you've seen at the moment. If you want to do something different than is allowed for in our standing orders, I suggest that you suspend standing orders through a motion and deal with it as you see fit, Mr Chairperson.
Okay.
Can I just have a bit of advice there, if you don't mind, under our standing orders? Someone moves a motion and gets seconded, okay? Then I forget what section it is, someone then may move an amendment to that motion, which I would be entitled
Yeah,
to.
I don't have those orders in front of me at the moment, Councillor, but I think that would be fairly normal business.
Okay, so can we have a mover and a second to amend our standing orders so that we
Or
can deal
suspend,
with it?
sorry, that. If you want to, just say the council suspend standing orders for dealing with this
13.3.
matter.
Yeah, so we need to
Do that and then we can forget about standing orders and
okay, so can I have a mover and a second for council, it's moving all over the place, to suspend our standing orders in dealing with this matter? Yep, councillor Hayden, councillor Hodge, all in favour? Is that in favour? Councillor Hayden, have you put your hand up or no?
Oh, no.
Okay, so that's,
carry
4-1 carried,
5-1.
5-1, sorry. Okay, so we'll move outside the standing orders.
Just as an aside, Mr Acting Mayor and Councillors, you'll be pleased to know that I'm hoping to get the revamped new standing orders to next month's meeting.
That would be very much appreciated, thank you, CEO.
Okay, so can I speak?
Yes?
So basically, my motion was lost, right, which was to waive the $208. Then the other one didn't get a seconder to the officer's recommendation. So that means that basically, I think the thinking here is that we don't want to charge them the $208. If I can get that. Is that the thinking amongst the councillors? So do we move a motion, we come out and we move a motion while we're here, before we go back to standing orders, that the fee be $1?
Councillors?
Through the chair, I'd consider a concessional waiver of probably up to 50% as a measure of good faith.
Councillor Hayden?
I'd be seconding what councillor Hodge moved, because I actually didn't vote on the first one. I didn't put my hand up. Now I'm back to the first motion.
So you're proposing to charge them $1, is that right?
I'd charge them nothing. That's exactly right there.
Right, so you've got some councillors divided, one wants to charge $1, one wants 50% concession.
I'll go to 50% through the chair.
I've already voted. Is the acting
We'll
mayor
deal with the
charged
$1,
nothing?
we'll deal with the $1 thing first. Do I have a mover and a second?
Just before we do anything, before we move anything, can we simmer out of standing orders? We can move a motion to charge them nil.
Can we make motion to what?
Charge them nil.
It's already been lost.
Been defeated.
Been lost.
So it can't be zero. So I'll move the motion that they be charged $1.
Okay, do we have a second for that? Councillor Hayden? Can we put to the vote? All in favour?
Mr Mayor, before you vote,
Sorry, hang on.
I just suggest a change of wording. Rather than saying the council amend the request to waive the fee to $1, the council reduce the rule numbering fee to $1.
Happy with that, councillor Hodge? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Put to the vote. Those in favour? Carried.
I'll move that we go back to
4-2. Hang on. Carried 4-2. Do you want to have your votes recorded? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Hodge?
I'll move that we go back to standing orders.
Resume standing.
Resume standing order.
Have a seconder? Councillor Bilney, all in favour? Thank you.
So Bill Meehan, who was the second one? Wilson.
Okay, let's move on to item 13.4, the RAD grant program for July, 1st of July to the 30th December 2020. Move and a motion, move and a second, please, to open up for discussion. Councillor Clifton, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to this?
No, I support the officer's recommendations.
Any other comment? Okay, can we have a mover and a seconder to accept the officer's recommendation? Councillor Clifton, Councillor Hodge, all in favour? Carried. Item 13.5, destination management. We have a mover and a seconder to open up for discussion. Councillor Bilney and Councillor Hodge. Councillor Bilney, would you like to talk to this?
No, I've nothing further to add.
Anybody else want to make any comment? Councillor Hayden?
Okay. Question, is it too far to travel to the southern end of the region? So it's 3.2.3 access states preparation of this document did not at the time reveal, nor did they investigate statistics particularly relevant or useful for the tablelands by the Great Inland Way, predominantly as the outback adventure, for which there is increasing demand. So Woodley, Pindarindi are working exceptional tourist stations, no mention. Too far to travel under 3.4.7. No mention of Mount Garnet in Hot Springs, the Progress Associations of Millamilla or Mount Garnet Vic. 3.6.4. The highest town in Queensland has the historic railway, no mention. Only about 1 hour to most of the area from Mount Garnet, and it's the same to travel back. So I think it's a disappointing report.
Does one of the officers want to comment?
your comments relate to the marketing strategy? Is that the, didn't even come out your way. I think this is our starting point. It's a high level document. The destination management plan provides some direction about the things that we will further explore. So definitely take your comments on note.
Through the chair, for those of us who know North Queensland a little bit, the destination marketing strategy front page is the Hinchman panel.
So through the chair, and it's actually not the version that was originally provided. I did send out an updated, the corrected version, so the version that was an error, the one that was provided in the hard copy report that councillors received. Thank you.
So I assume the question is to come to Councillor Hayden's comments. This destination marketing plan is, I guess it's an ongoing plan. Can it be changed? That's the question. Can this document be changed, or is it, that's it?
So this is, through the chair, so these documents that we have here are high level concept documents. The marketing plan is for the 2021 campaign.
C7 one.
The C7, that's right. That's a concept plan for the coming year, and we can certainly put more detail in that in terms of what actions we actually take. The marketing, the destination management plan has a lot more information in there that we can unpack over time, that we intend to unpack over time to really look at what actions we want to take and what we want to support. But certainly we can talk further with councillors, and we do workshop these things with councillors. So certainly we can take those things on note and make sure that we come back to councillors with some more information about how we're going to support those areas that Councillor Hayden has mentioned.
Any further comment? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the officer's recommendation? Councillor Milne, Councillor Wilkes, all in favour? Carried. Item 13.6, Councillor Milne will be leaving the room. Item 13.6 is Economic Development Fund. Can I have a mover and a seconder to open it up for discussion? Councillor Hayden, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hayden, would you like to talk to it? Yep.
Okay. Why have a grant with priority areas if we are not going to use them to score the applications? Roadside Chambers application covers 7 dot points as per page 326 of the agenda. One of the points is upskill, improve, education, training and employment opportunities. Roadside Chamber application would have employees who would be skilled in posting a marketing video through this application. If TRC has marketing and promotional channels to utilise, then why has nothing happened? And Roadside Chamber would not have wasted their time in applying. Also, please explain how 5,000 spent on earth moving fits our priorities. 3 dot points, and once the dirt is moved, where is the education, skills and training opportunities? Top paragraph on paragraph 3 on page 326. It is not just Ravensthorpe, it is included in the surrounding region. Officers state that to promote the region in line with new destination marketing, well, 3.6.4, other special interest markets railing experience. Only Athen Herman Historic Railway mentioned. Ravensthorpe has a railway station, a static museum and the working steam train Capella. Council in item 13.5 has been recommended to use social media using the combination of paid and organic social content, which is Facebook. I would like to see the Ravensbourne Chambers application reversed to be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden.
Is there another, can we just make sure there's another 5,000 in that budget fund, please?
Yes,
There is.
Yeah.
the funding is available to.
Yeah, when I added this up, it come under the, it was less than, what was the endorsed, it was less than the,
The allocation.
30,000 or whatever.
35,000.
35,000. Yeah. So there's opportunity there to include another line item.
I'd be happy to support that.
Mr. Acting Mayor, what I would suggest then is that Councillor Hayden move an amendment to point 6 in the recommendation, and that would have to be seconded and voted on, so it would simply be changing the word decline to endorse, consistent with all the other points.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Hayden. So, we have a mover to change the decline, the word decline, and to endorse in line item 6. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Carried. Then have we vote on the rest of the Okay, so can I have a mover and a seconder to now vote on the remaining parts of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hodge, Councillor Hayden, all in favour? Carried. Someone want to go and grab code? Okay, that brings us to notice of motion.
I declare the conflict of 14.1, so I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Item 14.1, we have a notice of motion from Councillor Clifton regarding the TRC nursery. Can I have a mover and a seconder to open this up for discussion? Councillor Clifton, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to the motion?
Yes, it's a major project. It's a major step forward into an area that seems to me not to have been done before by the TRC, and I'm not questioning the validity of it, in that because I don't really have enough information to be able to know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's why I've asked for this report. It is a substantial project. I do know that we make about $150,000 loss a year through the nursery. I do know that the Land Restoration Fund amounts are largely correct. Our TRC share 45, that would be part of about $350,000 we would receive over the 5 years. I'm not sure what happens to any credits that are carbon credits that are generated by it. I understand there is some income, but I'm not sure. I have sought an explanation. So, and so I'm keen to make sure we're formally advised in detail about this project.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk to this?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support it. Basically, it's just, for me, it's the information. Just, when we're framing our budget, I won't go back to the budget, it's always in the back of my mind, how we, I need to know everything. And I just I haven't got enough information on what the nursery is. I think Mark did send us an email back about the carbon credits.
Yep.
But I don't think we get the carbon credits.
We get the revenue, part of the revenue from the sale of the carbon credits to the Department of Environmental Science. We are not an entity that can actually deal in carbon credits, and that's why we are also partnering with a private entity that actually has that ability to deal. Through the plantings, carbon credits will be, or ACCUs as they're officially termed, will be generated. The third-party entity that we're working with in partnership, they will sell those to the Department of Environmental Science, and then depending on the proportion of the plantings done by the third-party entity and ours, those come, the revenue or the value of those ACCUs will then be distributed proportionally to that third party and ourselves. I can't give you a value.
Councillor Hayden?
So in consideration of number 2, I'd like to say that our nursery was never intended to make a profit, in the same way as our halls, libraries and roads are exactly the same. Instead of reviewing the nursery now, maybe it's time to first consider what services, out of all of our services we provide, should we provide to the community, and then review it. We seem to be picking things out willy-nilly over all of our services.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Any further comments? Look, I'll have a comment on this. I think it's very hard to talk about this item in this forum at this time because the information is not there for us. I personally don't have a real issue with asking for a report to be prepared on the operations as requested here. At least that way we can be informed before we have to make other decisions regarding the nursery and our budget. Yeah, I'm happy to support the Councillor Clifton's motion. So any further comment? Okay, we'll put to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Clifton's motion?
Who was the seconder, sorry?
We have a seconder. Do we have? We don't. We already have a seconder.
Oh, that was to discuss it.
Okay, so sorry.
I just assumed that Councillor Clifton would move his own motion, but we need
I
a
move my
seconder.
motion.
Yeah, do we have a seconder? Okay, put to the vote. All in favour?
If I may, just one question in relation to the time frame. Generally, not sure if I understand what the urgency around this is, but to get something to the February council meeting, we basically have 1.5 weeks to prepare this report. And there's actually a lot of different elements to this report because the nursery operation is completely disjointed and separate to the land restoration funding agreement and those type of things. The nursery was here well before we ever considered that. So there's actually 2 questions in this one report, and to subject the organisation to an arbitrary time frame without actually considering or understanding what other things we have to do on a day-to-day basis to run a business that provides a multitude of services to quite a large area and quite a number of constituents, might not actually be helpful, might actually impact us delivering other services. So my recommendation would actually be to amend it and to remove the time frame from this, and for us to come back to you at some stage to give you an indication as to whether we can actually provide you with a meaningful report that actually gives you the information that you're looking for. With this time frame, the report might be very high level and not meaningful. This is my sorry, and I should have probably mentioned that a little bit earlier.
Thank you, Mark. My understanding is that there's already some work being done on this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Look, through the chair, I have spoken with one of my officers to commence the work. I don't know how far they've progressed, and I also don't know. I haven't seen what they've delivered so far. So again, I have no confidence that we can actually provide you with a meaningful report in February. It's up to you if you want to leave this in, but the time frame might impact on the quality of the report.
Councillor Clifton?
The costs of bulk change the terminology for the purpose of the exercise. The costs of the nursery went up in 2018-19 by almost doubled, and now stand at about $150,000. And I understand that that was when the Land Restoration Fund pilot program was lodged. It wasn't approved till much later. In fact, it was approved in April last year. And as it currently stands today, this council hasn't had a briefing about it. Now, we are approaching our second budget. We know that the nursery is going to cost us, and this is a 5-year Land Restoration Fund's a 5-year program. So unless we do something to understand it and review it and understand what it all means, we're faced with $750,000 impost in 5 years against the ratepayers' funds without a known response by way of income. There will be some income, but it's unknown. It's a very open-ended thing, and the time frame might be short, but as an ordinary councillor's point of view, representing generally the ratepayer, we need to know about this before we form the budget. Now, if it's an incomplete report, it's an incomplete report. It needs some figures there which inform us what we need to include or not include in the budget. I think we've waited for a long time, and I know it's created a lot of angst amongst some people.
So with all due respect, and through the chair, this is the first time a resolution has been put on the board in relation to this matter. So the comment about we've waited for a long time, I'm not sure if I can understand that and subscribe to that. I'll leave it at that. The budget, Council is by legislation obliged to make the budget at the latest at the 31st of July of this year, similar to what they've done last year. So there is still a little bit of time to inform the Council, even if a report came after February. But again, I'm just pointing out the concerns that I have with an arbitrary time frame in relation to this matter. It's up to Council to decide what they want to do.
Councillor Wilkes.
Through the chair, I have to agree. We want to be informed by this. It's a fairly complex matter. We have to be informed. It is the first time that this matter has come before Council for us to make a decision on. And I would be in favour of removing the sharp time frame. I firmly believe we do need that information, but I wouldn't be happy in receiving a partially completed report. Yeah, through the chair, look, I acknowledge what Councillor Hayden also said. I personally am very supportive of the TRC nursery operations. They do have a lot of volunteer labour from out the area to come and support it. For me, it's a bit like a social well-being type atmosphere there as well for them. Again, reinforcing what Councillor Wilkes said, we need to be fully informed, and we can't do that with a half-baked report that's trying to meet a time frame. So I also would support taking out that onerous request of a time frame by February.
Councillor Christian.
Councillors may recall that this motion was put forward for the December meeting in exactly the same wording, but because it was withdrawn to be put forward at that time for the January meeting. So it's not as if council officers didn't have a good prior warning of this motion that it was going to be going up. So if my colleagues feel that we should change it to an indefinite date, that we receive a meeting and a report in the course of time, I have to avert to them. I don't agree with it though.
Is your motion, councillor?
I don't want to lose the motion, Mr.
If you want to amend, do you want to amend your motion?
Just point of order if you don't mind. That motion has been passed.
No, the motion, to my understanding, has been opened up for discussion. We haven't voted on it yet.
Thought we had.
No.
Yeah, it is voted on. Sorry, it's got a mover and seconder, it hasn't been voted on.
Yeah.
So it's,
Oh, Mr. Mayor, in the midst of, whilst we did our hands in the air, Mr. Viss sought to make an extra point. And so we've had that discussion since that point. I don't want to stand on the formality of that. I want to have something on which we can reasonably agree, and I don't want it to be lost. So, if that is the case, may I have a suggestion from Mr. Viss as to what time frame we should put on it?
You may ask that question. To be quite honest, I prefer not to give a time frame at this point in time because I haven't consulted with my bosses in relation to what's an achievable time frame.
May I ask my colleagues to suggest a time frame?
Any suggestions?
I suggest, to be fair to everyone, the April meeting. It's April, we got May, June, July, so April.
It's your motion, do you want to change it to?
I'll change to it. I'm happy to change to April if that's the correct procedure.
So where we go from here, Jack? We've already got, this needs to be voted on, just change the motion. So can we vote on the, we've got the motion up there now. It's with an amendment to change it to April.
I would have thought it was an amendment.
Yeah,
So
it should be amended.
Okay, so
So we vote on the amendment.
you want to vote on the amended motion? Okay, so the amended motion is up there as it stands. To change the date, the reporting date from February to April. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Okay. All in favour? Carried 5-1. And would you like your name recorded against it? No? Thank you. We might take a short break. If someone want to move that we go into recess for a short time, have a cup of tea, toilet break?
I'll move.
Councillor Hodge. Seconder, Councillor Clifton, all in favour? Thank you. Take a short break.
Oh my,
Down
hello.
Okay,
Yeah, we're live now.
back on screen. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to resume the meeting? Councillor Wilkes, Councillor Bellamy, all in favour? Carried. Okay. We're up to item.
Press on.
Are we good or? Yep, we're up to item 14.2. Notice of motion from Councillor Hodge.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, Kev. Up on the screen will come to who is here that to my motion I've put in different wording, which will be up on the screen now.
Yeah, and just remove this.
So that becomes the notice of motion. That's the extra wording. Not, yeah, that bit there.
This bit down the bottom here.
Yes, that.
Actually, this should be up there.
Yeah, that.
Sorry.
The top is got there.
So what have we got?
So what it,
Councillor Hodge?
it should say that.
Can we start from the beginning? Where's the,
This is what was in the agenda.
Keep going up.
Oh, sorry, that one there.
yep. And what's the amended?
This one here.
Is that your amendment?
Isn't there,
No.
there's some, isn't there?
Oh, hang on, there's
more?
something else here.
No.
Sorry. Is that the order it was in?
And what's just up above there,
Yeah.
Pete?
It should start off with
Oh, that was,
that the building of the power facility is prioritised for completion in line with state government grant funding approval. Right? And three points.
The methodology needs.
That's got to go in. Don't know where that come from.
It's part of Kev's amendment.
I'll bring this over. So you can handle this.
Yeah, Dave's got a question.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Dave.
just through the chair, the amended motion that's going up there now is not my amendment.
no,
My amendment,
this is
not yours.
Peter's.
yeah, my amendment was different.
What we did, I
Well,
sent
what's
the, I'll just sit down. What I did was I sent the two comments to the girls to put through as the new wording.
Yeah, that's it there.
Yeah.
Zero, yeah, that's it.
So then I've said the new wording will be one that Kev gave me. That's it there, that's good.
So let's be clear, the motion is from Councillor Hodge,
That's correct.
but an amendment to your original motion is in the public document, and that's what you're putting up.
It's replacing the wording.
Okay, so we need to be clear on the wording.
Jackie, can you just bring up the wording so we know what everyone's looking at?
Yep.
Because I'm confused at the moment, to be honest with you.
Okay. That's
Okay, that was what came out in the agenda,
Yeah, just, let's see what
and
we're
then
dealing with now.
that's
Yep.
what.
So that's it, Peter?
goes.
Can you confirm, Councillor Hodge, that the wording on the screen is your amended motion,
That's correct.
correct?
If I may, Mr Acting Mayor, I'm a little bit confused here because it's not making sense to me. The first part of it is very clear. Number one, it says it's subject to the same conditions relating to delays, etc. What are those same conditions? That's not clear. The subject, number two, the subject contract is delegated to the CEO. Well, we have to award the tender first.
Yep.
So it would be awarding a tender and then negotiating a contract. And to be frank with you, and our job is to give independent, impartial advice, I don't see the point of number three when we're trying to expedite this project. You're taking a point in time for a project that's nowhere near complete and asking for a report to council. I'd ask for what purpose, and I'll also say, when I want officers to be working on completing the project, we're taking them away from that and getting them to write a report for no clear purpose. So I'd rather see our effort as officers put in to completing the project.
Bob,
Which is consistent with the first part of the motion.
is there a C missing off the bottom of 3?
Yes. Should be there, it comes down a bit. See.
Where's the methodology? Disappeared to C. So, what's the word?
While they're fixing that up, I guess the intent here was, first,
Reasoning.
the intent is to get the building, the pound built, award the contract, or give the delegation to the CEO to award the contract. So because of timeframes, you know, because we all know we're always being advised that it's at risk if we don't complete it. We may lose the money for the works of Queensland. So basically it's about, the first part is we don't want to lose the funding, we want to get it built. So council will not stand in your way in time-wise, bringing the contract back to council. So we will give that order to the CEO. The other thing was the report was the whole scope has been changed that we knew of. So, yep, we understand we've got to get it built. The scope has changed. It's even on a different block to where originally it was going to be. It's all changed. Design roughly changed. So we wanted to bring back a report just to say to us councillors, you know, why was it changed? Why didn't you come and ask us? It's not. I don't want to be sort of pointing or anything like that. I just want you to come back and say, why was it changed and why weren't we informed? And the procurement. I think there's one of the things the people who do the plan. You know, how was that awarded? Was it, you know, I don't know, 60 grand or 50 grand? Was it a seal quote or what was it? How did they get the job? Because we've had complaints now. I don't want to go into it too much here. This is why I would ask the report. I don't want to go, because people have been ringing myself and the other councillors, how come I didn't get a choice, local, to do the design on that thing? So that's basically how I wanted to frame the motion. I don't really want to go into why and this at this point in time.
So through the chair, if I could just pick up on a point that I think, aside from anything here, that it's really critical that people understand that with regards to complaints, that we are, under legislation, we are obligated to capture and deal with complaints. So if people want to make complaints, and they're absolutely entitled to do that, they really need to be directed, those complaints need to be directed through so they can be appropriately captured and reported on. That's just a matter of...
And that's exactly what I've asked that person to do.
Excellent.
Is to put your email into info and CC the council's attention. So that's that part of it. So.
Sorry, through the chair, I might also just, with regards to scope, I guess just for clarity again, that the original, so the goal has always been to move from what we have at present, which is non-compliant in any sense, to something that meets at least our basic legislative requirements. The original plans, we talk about scope, included providing some amenity for officers working in that area and taking advantage of the land that was there and some other things. We came back to council about, we had conversations with council about what that plan was looking like in terms of cost. The fact that the amount that council has made available for the construction of the pound was insufficient to actually do all those things that we wanted to do. So we tested council's appetite for increasing the funding, and it was clear that council said no, the funding for this project is limited to that amount. And so by necessity, changes had to be made to ensure that we could specifically nail the issues around compliance. So everything else kind of had to be wound back so that we could build something that would still at least make us compliant. So that's the big picture with regards to the changes. I don't know if that changes the need for a report, but we'll just share that.
So,
Mayor, can I make some comments and suggestions? I think number one is, I've got no problem with the preamble. Jackie, can you bring that up?
This one?
Prioritise for completion, because that's what we're doing anyway, because we're aware of the funding guidelines and the approval. Number one there is something that would ordinarily be included in the contract. So my suggestion is that number one is not required, because it's something that is incorporated into the contract about delay. I think number two, we need to add in the words to expedite construction, all matters to complete the awarding of the tender and the negotiation of the contract is delegated to the CEO. Because they're two separate things. There's the award of the tender first, followed by the contract negotiations.
That's fair enough.
And again, Councillor Hodge, it's your motion, so.
Oh, I'm happy with that, Judge.
And number three, I think, is premature. I think a better approach, and this is from a government's perspective, is that we present a full report to council at the completion of the project as a debrief, if you like, saying what worked well, what didn't work well, and by then the project's completed, and we're not taking officers away from the goal of delivering the project.
Sorry, I missed the end of that.
Well, it's just for discussion at the moment.
Okay.
Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, I've got something to say, but I'm not sure whether we've got to get it on the motion up first before we then start debating it, or do you want to hear my point now? Or
I think we can hear your point now.
you're okay with that?
Because we haven't got it, Jackie, we haven't got a second. Where are we at with that? We've only got, Peter's put the motion
Peter
up.
put the motion up and he put his amendment up.
Yeah.
So
And we haven't got
I
any
guess
seconders or
Peter's-
anything yet?
No.
Okay.
We haven't actually got a motion to open it either, so
Okay.
I think it's still in motion.
So based on that, I was actually the original author of the amended motion, which included items 1 and 2. And that was come about due to the wording of must, which became very restrictive. And that's why what item 1 says about the same conditions relating to delays. If we kept it must by a certain date, that was where I was coming from with that. So I understand by removing that, we still got the same intent. It's my view that we get this project completed as a priority. For me, item 3 is a process that needs further investigation as a matter of due diligence, but would be preemptive at this point, noting the current point in the process as the tender only just went out on Saturday. So we're going to be talking about something we're only just started. So I question, how can we be fully informed at this stage? A debrief report later is more prudent in my mind. So that's sort of closely aligned with the CEO.
Any other comment?
Can we go just back up to the top, please, Kev? So, Peter, is that the original part of yours that you're keeping, must be completed, or did you?
Oh no, that's the
No,
agenda.
that was the agenda item.
Right. Right, so you've got it as prioritised for completion.
Yes.
Yeah, right,
So
thanks.
a lot of the councillors, a few of the councillors were a bit worried about the word must.
Yeah, good.
So this is why we've changed it to see if everyone is agreeable.
Thanks for clarifying that. Please.
Clarifying it.
Councillor, what should say?
Anybody else? Bernie?
Yeah, similar comment. I just cannot see the urgency for the report. We've got to be fully informed, and there's no point in, again, a half-baked report coming back to us when the project hasn't been completed. Should there be issues that are raised, whether they be procedural or whatever, through the process, we've still got to wait for the completion of the project before they can be adequately tabled with and argued over. I want to see the project commenced, completed, have a debrief later on. Don't use officers' time unnecessarily in reporting, in producing another report when the project hasn't even started. My views.
Any other comments? Councillor Clifton? Can I just ask before you go, Councillor Clifton, Jackie, can we bring back the original motion of this?
Yep. What's it there?
So what's the 5, 6 and 7?
Oh, well, that's just picking up the numbering from before.
Keeping in mind that number 2, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, still includes some of my wording in
Oh,
there.
okay.
Oh
so-
yeah, please put back Bob's wording in there if you can. Jackie?
Take it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said that the experience
Yeah,
matters
number 2
complete.
still
Yeah,
includes.
your wording's in there, is it?
It is, but I thought we're taking it back to
No,
the
leave
original.
that one there. And just, if you strike a line through 1,
Hang on, I'll just get the wording reversed out.
People speak up, it doesn't reflect your intent because it's your motion. Councillor, I should say, not Peter, sorry.
Construction. Yep.
so that's was your wording, Bob?
That was the
No.
That
the
is
original
Peter's-
amendment.
Oh, that,
Peter's wording.
The original was must, right? It was only about 2 lines.
yeah, no, I'm interested in these 3 components here. So, at the moment, it's your motion, don't forget, okay? You were I'm assuming you were happy with striking out 1?
Yes, on advice from the CEO, because that's part of the tender
Yeah,
Contract.
process.
yeah. You were happy with the inclusion of the words from the CEO?
Yes,
Okay,
that's 2.
so where's the number 3 in there, Jackie, please?
Number 3 is, this is Peter's 3.
That's as
And
presented?
this one up here is, number 3 is replacing 4.
That was my suggestion, that current 3 there,
No, I want the original 3 brought back up, please.
which is
Which is
4.
there.
Which is there.
Just don't cross out number 4, Jackie,
Yeah,
number 4.
all right.
So the original one, number 3 is 4, is that right?
That's
Yes.
correct.
So 4 reads, so a report of the full, a report be presented. Report, where's the wording? It's gone.
Okay, I'll read it to you.
No, let me please,
Yeah.
Councillor. I've got to get this clear in my mind. It's all over the place.
There was no full.
So, a report be presented to the February meeting.
Providing specific details for A, B and C.
Process, details, all expenditure up until the 21st, yes, okay. So, can we just leave that there for a moment, please? Anybody else want to talk to this? Councillor Clifton?
I really think we need a number of assurances from my point of view. I asked Mr. Viss in our pre-agenda meeting the other day, were the quoting processes followed in the selection of the people who were awarded the contract pro arc, and he didn't give me an answer. I think.
Can I just interrupt you, Councillor? I don't want to get too in depth into this because we don't know all the information. That's the reason why I'm asking for a report. So, can we just keep it sort of like high level, if you don't mind?
Well, I think it's really critical because I think there's a whole series of parting of the ways in this particular project which have not been resolved, and I think that's why that report should be sooner rather than later.
If I make one point of clarity, I think there's here a perception that I'm actually involved in the delivery of this project as the chairman for the infrastructure and planning. I'm actually not. This project is being delivered, and that's not to remove myself from any responsibility or anything like that. I just can't give you an answer because I don't necessarily have all the details because it's not being delivered by my department. So please accept my apologies. I'm happy to work with Hillary to give you an answer on those questions. I just didn't have the answer because I wasn't involved.
Yeah, look, I'm not suggesting we have any answers at this point in time. It's just a motion put forward by Councillor Hodge, and the detail will be in a report back to council, I've no doubt. So at this point in time, and is there anybody else got anything further to say before I speak? No?
Only further to what I commented before, I think item 3 is more appropriate than item 4 at this point. Yeah, so I think we need to.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Councillor Willie? Anybody else before I speak? Okay, look, it's my belief that we should be giving the CEO, and I think this is the intent of Councillor Hodges' motion, is that we give the CEO and council officers every opportunity to fulfil this contract within the designated time frame set by the state. And by giving delegation, as mentioned in item 2, removing the need for the contracts and things to be brought back to council, I think that's a good thing. And that way there's no reason why it can't get done as quickly as possible. Item 4 is shown on the board there. I support. It's nothing to do about preventing the contract or the building to be physically built on the ground. It's asking for a report in the procurement processes, the expenditure and the methodology up until the 28th of the 1st 2021, which is today, about how we come about, how this project has come about to the final document that's been put out to tender. So it's not about, I don't see it being stalling the built project. I see it giving us some information. It's about how we got to this at this point in time. It's not about, I don't really think it's necessary to wait till the project's finished to get this information. This has already happened. This has happened. Yes, the project when completed, if there needs to be further information provided, we'll say be it. But at the moment, that's what we have. So I'll be supporting the councillor's recommendation with regards to item 4 as shown on the board.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, as I stated before, my concern is not the report, it's the timing of the report, because we've really got a contradiction with respect in relation to this motion. We're talking about in number 2 that we want to expedite construction, we want to expedite the process, the process. But then in number 4, those very same people who have to expedite the project are taken offline to write a report that will take some time to present to council. So that's not expediting the project.
The tender process, when does the tender process close?
It's usually open for 21 days, and as Councillor Bilney said, it was advertised last Saturday.
So there's still 21, well, still a significant amount of time where the tendering process is taking place, and not much has been done between now and then, I wouldn't think.
With respect, I'd say that you don't understand the operations of council with that comment, Mr. Acting Mayor, because people aren't sitting on their hands waiting to write reports.
Through, if I could, through the chair, just as an example of that, today a site visit is being conducted with a number of people who've indicated interest through the tendering process. So the time frame provided to allow people to actually prepare the tender is there to enable them to ask questions and obtain more information and engage. So there is quite a bit of work involved in actually facilitating the preparation of tenders. So just so I mentioned that.
Anyway, if there's no further comment, Councillor Hodge?
Fine.
Fine with
3 or 4.
You just need to clarify that point. You're right, Councillor Clifton, it's whether 3 or 4 is in there, and that's up to you, Councillor Hodge, because it's your motion.
It'll take one or the other out.
Three's added in. Okay, so we go to 4. And Rob, you can step in here if you like. Oh, sorry, Mr. CEO.
So
I want to get I just want to get it right and clear where we are. So a report for number 3, right? Is still, I don't mind that was put in by recommendation from other councils. That will the CEO a full report to council at the completion of the project as debrief, which would be fine. I mean, we should do that with all things, one would think, so we know what's going on. And 4 is a report presented in the February meeting, providing specific details for procurement process, following the design the project manager. I mean, that was to do with the change, Mr. C. We just want to know what, I know you've touched a bit on it, but we really want to know why it changed and the procedure, you know, because all we knew was this was happening, then a tender comes out and that's happening. Completely different to what we knew, and that's why, you know, I've had getting a bit hammered. So it's therefore so everyone understands why it was done, and that's the reason why. This is not meant to be finger pointing or anything like this. This is just so it's open and everyone knows why. And as you said, that'll come out to say we didn't think there was enough funding, so it had to be changed. Right.
Sorry, through the chair. Specifically told there would be no additional funding made available.
We absolutely said there would be no, other than the $450,000.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to go on the reasons because I think we could have built it for under 450,000. Let's not go into that. Okay.
Put in a tender, councillor.
Not with this part. You don't think I like this one either. Going back to the old one. Okay. So, I still like that, right? I want that in there. a detailed list of all expenditure including committed costs. We really wanted to know, you know, we've spent something thousand dollars before we've got anything. I don't think that's an easy one for I think officers to give that's easy. And C, the methodology reasoning used to arrive at the final design recently to put out the public tender. Probably A and C are similar, very similar. You know, why did we go that way? How come we did this? Why did we do it? So I guess A and C are very similar. So I don't, you know, the CEO might disagree with me about the time it would take to bring those reports, but I can't consider that very time consuming, those two bits. So that's why I'm leaving it there.
Hang on. Okay, so that's what you want? All of that there?
Should take out.
Someone wants to amend it, they can do it.
Sorry?
We should take out number 3, that was my suggestion, instead of the current 4.
No, I don't mind that being in there, Rob. That's when the report is, that's when it's all built and completed.
So, if I may, then it would become clear if number 3 became number 4 and number 4 became number 3, so that the report you want by the end of February is, if you like, an interim report for those 3 particular items. And then at the end of the project, a full debrief. One is a specific report for those 3 specific things. At the end of it's not therefore meant to be a full and completely detailed report. It's only referring to those 3 things, and then a report be presented to council of the completion of the project as a debrief. So it logically follows, from my mind anyway, that 4 becomes 3 and 3 becomes 4, and they follow each other.
Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy with swapping those 2 around. I'd just like to, one more point I'd like to say is that...
Before we do that,
yep.
Jackie, can you change that over, one step at a time, please?
Are you wanting to take one out? Because that's going to alter the numbering.
Yes.
Yeah, take one out, because this is what's going to be...
Can we get that top bit included on that screen, Jackie, as well?
Yeah.
So we can see the whole lot?
Councillor Hodge, are you happy with the way that's presented?
I'm happy with that. And just as a final point, what this is all about us to me is that going forward in future, how we have shovel-ready projects ready, set, ready to go in future when funding's ready. Because I don't want to say too much anymore, but that's a little part of it. So that's it there.
Okay, any further comment?
So I think I have to move that, do I? I move that motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Clifton? Anybody want to comment further?
I do have a comment. One of the big arguments, or one of our objectives, was to reduce the amount of, in our word, nonsense that gums up the system. I think by doing this, we're going exactly in the opposite direction. We're agreeing, yep, we want a debrief. Now, from my former background, debriefs were an essential part of moving forward with anything. It looks at procedural matters, who did what, for what reason, and let's rectify it from there if there's issues that are raised. By asking for an interim report as to what's going on, are we going to set an ugly precedent here? Like how far are we going to delve into things, as I mentioned before, nothing that's happened this far can be removed, discounted or hidden. It's all there, it's all documented. I just think that what we're doing is negative to what we initially set out to do. Let's get the thing done, have the debrief. If we've got to look at procedural issues, let's look at them. If we've got to change the way that we deal with the procurement policy, as the CEO has mentioned many, many times, if we don't like something, change the policy. I've voiced my opinion. I think it's pretty evident which way I want to go with it.
And just to clarify, because we need to be really clear about the role, my role, the role of officers and the role of councillors. Your role is strategic, and you're exactly right, Councillor Wills. If the policy's not right, it's your responsibility to change the policy, usually on advice. When we talk about procedures and operations, that's clearly my responsibility under the Act. So there's no way known in the world that I'll be bringing a report to council dealing with those operational matters, because that's not your responsibility. That's mine. And if there's any doubt about that, I suggest people go and read the Act again, because it's set out very clearly in there. I'm not going to bring operational matters back to this table. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Bob. Look, I don't want operational matters brought back to the table. I really didn't want to get down to this level of discussion. What we want is a report back to the February meeting to give us an understanding how the predicament that we're in at the minute come about.
What difference does the time make that?
Because the difference is, like I've tried to explain, is that in my mind, and this is the area I didn't really want to get into, but it's getting to that, I need to say this, is that there's been a substantial amount of money committed to this project already, without anything being constructed on the ground. That has a bearing on the outcome of the final design concept that's been put up for tender at the minute. What was put forward to us back in the early days is totally different to that there. And the amount of money that's been spent to date does not reflect what we wanted in the first place, that we agreed upon, and what we also showed to the Minister and spoke to the Minister about when he visited the site. So, I'm concerned that if we're challenged by somebody or organisation, that we're going to find it difficult to be able to explain ourselves, because we now know that there's been a significant amount of money put up or committed to this project without anything being built, and that significant amount of money has impacted on the end result of what we're being delivered. That's my concern.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Hang on. So this is the reason why that motion there is as it is. It's got nothing to do with pointing fingers or blame game or anything of that nature. It's to recognise where we've gone wrong and to put measures in place to ensure that doesn't happen again. We are, as councillors, are responsible for the public funds, and we really need to be assured that the public and the ratepayers are getting value for money and everything we do. So that's all I want to say, because I don't want to get into it without having a report for that.
Well, I'd like to raise a point of order. I think the use of the words predicament, where things went wrong, we can't justify what we've done. I take offence to that. You say that councillors are responsible for the use of public money. Again, I suggest you go back and have a look at the Act. Officers and the CEO are also responsible for the use of public money. We carefully look at procurement, we carefully look at the projects. You talk about the original project that went to council in a workshop. That project was for $1 million. Council didn't approve $1 million, it approved $450,000. So officers are now trying to work within that financial constraint to deliver a project that will satisfy the legislation. So I think some of the comments, Mr. Mayor, I raise them as a point of order because I believe they're incorrect.
Thank you, Bob.
If I can, just on finishing, I agree with a lot of what you've said. What I said also was that nothing that has happened this far can be removed or detracted from or hidden. If the reasoning that we should be looking at this is simply one of the major issues that if we investigate it from an external authority, nothing has happened that has been determined to be wrong. If that comes from a debrief and we go back to, if we've got to change policy and direct that the CEO look at his procedural matters, well, that's something to look at down the track. Getting a report, demanding a report for next month's meeting isn't going to change anything. Any of the issues that you raised just now, it's not going to change an iota between February and when the project is finished. I just think we're putting additional strain on resources that are currently stretched. We would be getting information that is only half-baked because the project's not finished. We don't know what other things are going to happen between now and then. And I just think that we're going down a track that isn't in line with what we set out to do. Given my opinion, thank you for your time.
Councillor Lodge?
Well, this was the last thing that I wanted to be this sort of talk, if you want to put it that way. The point was to get this done, this pound built. Look, there's things in here that I don't really want to go anymore. There's things in this plan that, you know, I think the construction is the second part. You've got the existing pound, which is going to be renovated, and you've got the new part, which is pretty hard to read here, but I think it's about 10 metres by 8. So I'm not sure about that either, but I don't want to sort of delve into that. All I want to do was, the main thing was to get it built. Plan has been changed. That didn't come to us. Should have come to us. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, you just might as well just wipe the bloody wipe the motion, as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't really here to be finger pointing or doing anything. The officers just, for God's sake, let's get this done. But listen, there's some few processes here that we didn't think was quite right, why things were changed, and that's all I've asked. Not to start digging or pointing or anything.
Okay, we have.
I don't have any more.
Oh, sorry.
So it's one of the things
Are you
is that
finished?
Yeah.
Finished? Councillor Hayden?
we put funds in to build a pound. It's not really up to us how much it's costed until it's up to officers who are doing prices. And it's not just the building. You've got skip bench, you've got supervisors, you don't know what the traffic's going to be like. So there's a lot more than just what you think's on a piece of paper sometimes. So just remember that. It's not, hey, you might have to stop and go to bring trucks in. You don't know. So the whole scope of it sometimes is really blown out when people think, I was just putting up a building on my block of land. I get away with a lot more than what council would get away with. Because it's the rules and regulations nowadays. I want to look at them.
Any further comment? Okay, so as it stands, we have a motion on the books that's been moved and seconded. Is that right?
We've got a mover and a second, yes.
Yep. So we now need to vote on this motion as it reads on the board there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so those in favour? Those against? Okay, we have a 3-3 motion. So, Mr. CEO, of the casting vote as the chair, and my vote will be to support the motion. Okay. Our next order of business is item 14.3, notice of motion from Councillor Clifton with regards to TRC asset management plan.
May I speak to the motion?
Yes, well, do you want to put the motion forward?
Well, that's a point of clarification. before we put the motion on the table, if I may. I notice that we're having a council workshop on the 2nd of February relating to the disposal of land and assets. So this was formulated before that, so it may be a relevant thing to put forward. So I'd seek advice from officers or from the CEO as to whether it becomes irrelevant because we're having that workshop.
Through you, Mr Acting Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Clifton. I'm not fully aware of the content of that workshop at this stage, but I might defer to Mark as the General Manager.
Thank you, CEO. I have also not seen the full content of that workshop, but the intent of that workshop is going to be to basically take a full list of council's facilities and assets and land to the council, including its tenure and its current use, to have a discussion about what council is of mind to do with those facilities. Council officers cannot make decisions about what services we provide, and all those facilities, potentially the majority, by far the majority of those facilities and lands and things like that, provide a service to the community one way or another. So the purpose of that workshop is to inform council about what that is and to seek guidance from council as to what they want to do following being provided with that information. So, for example, in relation to point 1 on the thing that's currently not on the table yet, we don't know which lands can be put up readily for sale because we don't know what council's intent with that land is. So, it's just, so the workshop might provide further clarity.
Thanks, Mark. So on that basis, I'm happy to withdraw this motion from
Okay, so the motion is,
discussion.
you're going to withdraw the motion?
Yep.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn. Okay, item 14.4, notice of motion, Councillor David Clifton, about organisational services, organisational review.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to withdraw that motion.
You going to withdraw that motion as well?
Yep.
Motion withdrawn. Okay.
If councillors want an update on the operational review generally, I'm happy to do that in now, Mr Mayor, if that's appropriate.
Talk to it now?
Yeah, just by way of update. I know it's not on the agenda, but
yep.
I think it's timely. As you know, there were two parts to what we call the organisational review. There was the organisational review itself, which involved the structure. That was approved by council in September 2020. So the organisational review as such is complete. What we're currently working on, and that was in the scope that was approved at council workshop, is the operational review. So we're looking at staffing, efficiencies, workflows, and so on. Now, there's been a significant amount of work go into that. Our last formal meeting for the operational review is on the 14th of April. Following that, Hilary, Mark, myself, probably Erica and definitely Kelly as the HR manager will be analysing the results of that, and at some stage we'll be coming back with some information to council, because you'll need that for the purpose of informing a budget at some point in time. So that's really where we're at. The thing is, I'm not going to put a timeline exactly on it, but you will have information to help inform your budget. Keeping in mind that last year, or for this budget, we got a direction late May, early June to reduce the deficit from a proposed $2 to $3 million to a balanced budget. Now, because of the great work by especially Erica and her staff and the leadership team, we were able to produce a budget that balanced the books within about 5 weeks, and then delivered that to council 2 weeks before the budget meeting. So we've got until the 31st of July to adopt a budget. We would be hoping that we'd have some information to inform council's budget process in time for that adoption of the budget. It may not all be complete because we're bound up with the Industrial Relations Commission orders to consult with a whole range of people about any plans that may come out of that review. However, if we budget X amount, whatever that X is for costs, anything we do after the adoption of the budget is an automatic saving. So there's an ongoing process, and as you know, with our budgets, we do our regular reviews as well. So it'll be a continual work in progress as we go along to find those savings. We've approached the whole process with a view to becoming more efficient and reducing costs. That was in the scope of the review that was presented to you at the workshop, and that's still in our mind. So that's where we're at, Mr. Acting Mayor. I hope that makes sense, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob? Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Item 15, business without notice. Is there any business without notice? No? Okay. Item 16, confidential items. There are no confidential items. We'll move on to item 17, the next council meeting, the next meeting of council will be on Thursday, 25th of February 2001. And with that, we will close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We got workshop